I rise to support the position of the opposition Leader of Government Business in relation to the pandemic motion put before the House. One of the things I think that we do lose focus on when we're discussing what's happened with COVID, and the member for Ripon described it well, it's the focus of how do we move back to, and we hear in the community, COVID normal. Whereas our focus should be how do we move back to normal? How do we find our way back to that normal, everyday life? And the issue with this government and mandates is it's a one-trick pony. They have no other alternatives other than the mandate. And these mandates, whilst in here is what we're debating today, are affecting everyday life. A volunteer out in the southeast with the CFA who can't get in and go out and does what he loves doing in protecting our community. Or worse still, and I'm vaccinated, I actually think people should get vaccinated. There's currently 6 firefighters within FRV who do have a double dose vaccination. They've had their 2 doses, they've done everything right, but for medical reasons, for pregnancies, for breastfeeding, they opted to be later with those 2 doses. So instead of getting the doses originally when it came out for the original mandate, they were away on leave for health reasons and couldn't get them until January. And now the government with the new mandate has no flexibility and have said by the 12th of March, firefighters must have their 3rd dose. And that would include, remember from Melton beware, ambulance officers as well, must have a 3rd dose by the 12th of March. And then if they don't have that 3rd dose by the 12th, doesn't matter if they're a paramedic or an ambulance officer, they won't be working at all, because the government has told them that as of the 12th, they can no longer work until they get their 3rd dose. Now, these are people who are genuinely within these organisations, and they have been told in writing through FRV that they can't even access their leave. They can't access their long service leave, and they won't be working until such time. An assistant principal contacted me today and for a medical exemption couldn't get her 1st and 2nd dose until January, and as of March 12th will be stood down until April 16th when she can get her 3rd dose. And that's simply not good enough. However, in this place, we are here to represent all people, all of the community. I congratulate the fact that we're at 93.1%. To those that have got the vaccination, we should be saying thank you. And when we get to that 95% double dose, we should be saying thank you. But we have to have a mechanism where we are moving back towards the cases where people who choose not to or can't can get back out into society. Because you can't lock them up forever, and you can't remove them from society forever. And the member for Melton who said you would sideline him if you're playing footy, it's not football, it's not basketball, it's not sport. It's everyday lives of these people who deserve, like in New South Wales, deserve to ensure that they can get back out into the community. And I'd ask why in New South Wales, where they've reopened, they've opened up the community, and the cases today are 1,000 different. 1,000 different. So New South Wales to Victoria has 1,000 different, and they're back open. They're rebuilding. They're recovering. They're getting back to not COVID normal, they're getting back to normal. Whereas here in Victoria, the only thing we're concentrating on is how do we keep these people totally away from our life. Now, everybody in here knows, because it's read out here before, the one person in here is the member for Forest Hill, who is not in this place for the reasons of he is not vaccinated. And at the time, it went against a lot of the things I believed in, but we supported the fact that we had to have those vaccinations at the time. But there becomes a time where he is deserved to be here to represent his community. At the time we had COVID and there was a lot of people away from this place for other reasons, because of travel from regional parts to Victoria into Melbourne, others in the community within this place who would stay from home, but we had a television screen up here the member for Mildura was asking questions from. But instead we've excluded 48 to 50,000 voters from Forest Hill from having a voice in this place. And what we need to do is ensure that we have a screen or we have the ability for that, but we're not. We're working on ways to keep him out. Now, I will say, whilst there's 7% of people in the community who choose not to get vaccinated, and you can call them anti-vaxxers, you can call them whatever you want, they also deserve a voice in this place. They deserve to be heard. Now, I don't agree with signs out the front that were with half the people out there protesting, but I do know of many people that attended those protests who were just mums and dads from in my electorate, or small businesses that have been smashed apart because they have struggled through what has been happening here in Victoria. And they're looking for a plan. And when the government continues to have mandates, including in this place, the leadership they're showing out there is we're going to continue on the same path where Melbourne itself is dying and we have more lease signs on windows in Melbourne than we have cranes up building our state. And that is a sad place we don't want to be. We need to see people getting back to work. We need to see changes in mask mandates. We need to see people having the ability to get back to normal. They will not return to work whilst you still have masks in the workplace. They just won't do it. And I would almost bet to say that nearly every member of this parliament, Labor, Liberal, Greens, Independent, whilst in your electorate offices, most won't wear their masks. That would be almost guaranteed. And if you do, there's one of two things: you're lying, or the fact is you actually choose to do it in your place, which would be the bare minimum. We need to make sure that businesses have that opportunity. We need councils to come back. We need major businesses here in the city to get back so we can see our cafes start to revive. We've seen Chris Lucas out talking about the restaurants in Melbourne and the restaurant scene, how much it has died by not having people here in the city. I know the Minister for Arts is across the table at the moment. We need to see people can come back into the shows that are in Melbourne. When I was in Sydney recently, you could travel wherever you wanted, you could go around and watch the shows, and it was vibrant. And that should be what is happening back in Melbourne. It is time that every person, I don't care who you are, every person is welcomed back into our community. Those that are the greatest risk are those that aren't vaccinated. I agree with that. Our health system has been failed by this government, and that is what can't keep up because of the failure to plan and invest by this government. The people in the community, when we go out and speak to private hospitals, we're out speaking to this week when you're talking about elective surgeries, they've been failed because they haven't got a plan on how to get back to business. We asked a question yesterday about Rebecca out our way, and she's from down in Pakenham. Why wasn't she given access to elective surgery? Why wasn't she put in a position where she could get back into the system? A system where doctors yesterday and a surgeon was on social media turning the lights off in the surgery because he's told he can't continue with the surgeries he was supposed to continue with. It's because our mandates are the only answer, and therefore the government hasn't sat down and done what's needed to plan for the future. And we'll talk about rebuild and recover all the way through to the election, but what we will say, these mandates, the mandates across our state, other than health and aged care, we have to find a way to move away from them. And when you bring in a mandate, people stop listening to the education because it's compulsory. We need to find a way to remind people the best outcome for you is to be vaccinated. But we need to make sure that every single person in this state has an ability to be in the workforce, in the economy, at their family events, going out to the restaurants, enjoying what we have of our lives. We need to make sure that we can move away and find a plan to say to Victorians, we are over the mandates that are happening here in this state. We want to make sure that people have that personal choice. That is the reason I got into this parliament, to be the voice of every person when it comes to your choice. This government only have one option, and that is to remove your choices, to remove any decision you have in yourself and now coming up into your children. And we're going to see mandates here in this state for a third vaccination, possibly a fourth and a fifth. And Victorians will not tolerate it. And when I go to markets, when I go to stalls, when I go out in the street, they're telling me these things. This is the message I'm getting. And if Labor MPs aren't getting it, it's because you're not in the community speaking to the people that need to hear what's going on.